Hey y'all, welcome to this video. This is by request. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I'm going to be swatching and comparing all of the bronze eyeshadow in my collection. If you're new to my YouTube channel, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Hannah. I love beautiful things. I have a beauty channel and I do sometimes review new makeup and talk about trends in fashion, but I also like to really focus on using what I have. If that sounds good to you, I hope you'll subscribe. Let's go ahead now and get into the meat of the video. Okay, first things first, I need to find all of the bronze eyeshadows in my collection. I'm going to be swatching all of my single eyeshadows and all of the bronzes in my eyeshadow palettes. Okay, this is everything. These are my two palettes of singles. And right now I have some singles in this little palette that I built the other day. And then the rest of these are pre-made palettes. And then this is a little single eyeshadow that happens to be bronze, so I'm gonna include it. I don't think there's a bronze in here. No. In the gold palette, there are definitely some bronzes. There are at least these two. The lila palette, yeah, I don't think that I would call any of these eyeshadows bronze. Here's the Alter Ego Daydream palette. I would definitely call Cloud 9 a bronze of a sort. But are there any bronzes in the Artemis palette? I think Cat right here, maybe some people would consider a bronze. I feel like it's pretty yellow though. It's like a gold. It's like a slightly coppery gold. I am going to try to be generous with my definition of bronze. I'm going to try to include multiple undertones, but I really feel like these are gold. I kind of feel like this is a bronze though, and it's similar in shade. This, it's like thicker. It's almost like it's got more thick pigment, like more color. Whereas those other two, they felt very light and sheer, more like a sheer wash of gold. And this feels like to me a very, very bright version of a bronze. Yes, and the two from the Artemis palette, which are the two on either side, have more orange in them. They're really like coppery gold. And I think that the one from the Flower Beauty palette, I'm going to consider a bronze because it's just more neutral. It's definitely a bright bronze. It'll be one of the brightest, but I'm going to include it, and I'm not going to include these. The Natasha Denona Sunrise palette has a pretty bright, warm bronze in it, but I consider this a bronze. I treat it as such, so I'm going to include that. Is Resilient from the Persona Identity 2 palette a bronze, or is it just a metallic brown? Maybe it's holding down the fort on the totally opposite end of the spectrum as such a deep bronze that we just considered a metallic brown. But let's see. I'm gonna keep it on the table for the time being. There are definitely two bronzes in the Rowan Warm Quad. And even though this is kind of a taupe, I'm gonna include it and we'll see how it stacks up against the other shades. That's Yep from the 52 Degrees Cool palette. It's kind of like something you might consider a cool bronze, which is an interesting idea. But Hashtag from the 1111 Quad is not a bronze. It's got like some gray in it, some purple. It's definitely like an ashy taupey neutral rather than being a bronze. This is the Tom Ford Cream and Powder in Naked Bronze. Definitely a bronze. I don't think that there are any bronzes in this little palette that I've been working with. Here are all of my square-shaped singles. And this, I feel like, yeah, let's include it. I mean, it's definitely kind of a greeny gold version of this kind of thing, but again, I'm trying to cast a wide net. This is another one that's definitely green leaning. It's like a greeny, maybe a greeny bronze. I feel like that's quite on the edge. I feel like that's really more of a green. It's like an olive color. Let's take it out for the time being and just see where we end up. But I feel like a greeny bronze is closer to what I consider to be bronze in makeup than something like this, which is like, you know, definitely a more purpley taupe. So I'm not going to include those guys, but I am going to, for the time being, include these guys. And yeah, like this one to me is definitely, that's copper. You know, like that's definitely like a red warm color rather than being a bronze. I feel like bronze can like eke into the green territory, but when it really starts eking into the red territory, it becomes a peach or a copper. And if it starts eking into the purple territory, it becomes a taupe. These are all of my round singles, and I feel like we have more candidates here. This is Colored Rain Golden Olive. It's definitely a green or a bronze leaning green or a green leaning bronze. But I feel like if we included this Adept shade, then we have to include it. This looks very dark brown. It's 365 from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, but I know that it performs like a bronze. It buffs out with quite a warm undertone actually. But this right here, even though it looks almost exactly the same in the pan, that's Makeup Geek Steampunk, and it is a really dark, rich, chocolatey brown. I wouldn't consider that a bronze. Gosh, this is, again, it's like a very warm, peachy color. I don't know. I don't know if I consider this to be a bronze. It's what we would call a warm, peachy bronze, I guess. I'm starting to feel like I should include this, but then I feel like that means that I need to go back and include those ones from the Artemis palette. We will see. I'm getting a little flare of sunlight. I'm filming earlier in the day than I usually film, so I'm not used to the light coming in. Do you see that? Okay, I'm giving in. I'm just gonna cast as wide a net as I feel like is feasible. I'm gonna pull those ones back in from the Artemis palette, and we're gonna have like the whole spectrum from the warmest and peachiest to not bronze through the neutral middle and into the deepest and greenest not bronze. That's ColourPop Millie, definitely a copper. If I had my druthers, I'd definitely just consider that to be a copper. Wow, I thought I had so many bronze singles or singles that you would consider bronze, but I really whittled down my collection in my last single eyeshadow declutter, and I lost a lot of the redundancy. That is too much of a taupe to be included. That's it for what's in there, but it made me wonder if I should include this Natasha Denona shade, which is called Sienna. It is a duochrome, but I feel like bronze is like one of the base colors, and it might be interesting to swatch it alongside some of these greeny bronzes, especially now that I've decided to like relax my definition a little bit. Yeah, and we're back to including these warmer, peachier, more gold-leaning, quote-unquote bronzes. We might even, oh yeah, actually maybe Pluck is the bronzest of all from this palette. We might even include it too. All right, let's put these singles in here for safekeeping. Okay, I think I've got them all in frame, and I'm just going to wing it, starting from what I expect will be the lightest and peachiest and warmest ones, or even the goldest ones, the ones that feel like they're edging out of being defined as bronzes because they might be more coppers or warm golds or something like that. We're going to start with that group and then move into the more true bronzes from there, and then move out of the more true bronzes in the other direction, the cool and then maybe the green direction. I'm gonna unhook these thumb holes so that I don't get bronze eyeshadow all over this top. So I'll do my best, but I don't feel confident in my ability to get the gradient exactly perfect on the first go. I'm just gonna try to kind of group things together. So I do think that probably Catch right here in the Artemis palette and Provoke are some of the palest and warmest or peachiest bronzes. And then yes, this one from the Flower Beauty palette is in that realm as well. And probably Dayspring from the Sunrise palette. Dayspring is getting more into the kind of dusky peachy realm, which I think these two belong in. These ones are the ones that I'd probably call gold, but that's our starting point. So I'm going to start here with the flower. This is the one from the Flower Beauty palette. This is Provoke from the Artemis palette. And this is Catch from the Artemis palette. I love the way that fingers look after swatching. The color on my pinky here is Dayspring from the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Some warm, coppery, light bronzes. Let's take these palettes out of frame. I feel like it's kind of a lot visually, and there was only one in this palette that I wanted to include, so we're going to take that out. And I think that Dayspring is the only thing that you could call bronze from this palette as well, so I'm going to take that out of frame. I think that probably this Depotted Juvia's Place palette and Millie, which is a ColourPop single, are going to be in the next round. Yeah, these are like less gold, more peachy. I think if we're going to include Pluck from the Artemis palette, it'll be in this set of 4, although it's more neutral than either of them. And maybe more of a pink, but you know, we'll put them all in. And that makes me think that probably Cloud 9 from the Daydream palette could go in this realm too, because I think of that as like a pink bronze. It's this one right here. Definitely swatching as more of what I would call a copper. That's okay. And then let's do this Depotted Juvia's Place shadow next to it. Also kind of a bright pinky copper. Let's put down the one from the Daydream palette, Cloud 9. It looks more like Millie. And lastly, what's on my ring finger here is Pluck from the Artemis palette. Even though it looks more peach in the pan, I feel like Pluck is the truest bronze we've gotten so far. It has the most brown in it. Maybe the first one that most people would even consider to fall under the definition of bronze. That is such a pretty shadow. This swatch really makes me want to use that shadow more. Okay, that definitely does it for the Daydream palette. It really just has that one bronze or bronze leaning shadow. And does it do it for the Artemis palette? I mean, Camouflage right here, I haven't even considered, but actually, if we're going this far, I feel like we're probably going this far, right? But I'm gonna put it down here on the other end, because well, actually, maybe that's more of like the golden bronze or like the yellow golden bronze that people think of. I feel like for some people that bright yellow-orange bronze is probably their definition of bronze, whereas I tend to think of it more as being like a brown, more neutral or even cool-toned thing. But I think that that's probably it for Artemis. Pounce is definitely copper, and the other ones, Camouflage, Pluck, Catch, and Provoke, I've swatched them all. Okay, so we've gotten to here. We've brought ourselves to this more neutral, maybe slightly peachy, brownish copper bronze. So what would be next up? We've already swatched these two. These are all kind of green except for that one. These are both, well, maybe we're getting, maybe this, which I think is called Alchemist. And we might be getting close to one of the Rowan shadows. So let's swatch this and see how it looks on my finger. That's bronze. That's what we call bronze. Look at that. Oh, I live. But let's also see what Nikki dust looks like. Oh, it's got a lot of silver reflect in it, so it's definitely leaning more neutral, right? That's like a big leap to this one. I don't know if I should have even swatched it, although it could be getting close to time, right? This one's probably warmer than many of the ones that are left, so let's see what it looks like. This is J'adore, and yeah, but it too is like that rich brown, rich bronzy brown, and they're so different from the Natasha Denona one, but they're close to this. They're close to how I kind of know this one swatches. And Resilient, well, Resilient is like a chocolate, but it's also kind of warm. Like I think maybe warmer than this one, and probably warmer than these two Rowan ones. I think some of these are going to end up pretty out of order. Curious, right? I think that shade-wise, perhaps, in terms of like the yellow undertone that it has, perhaps I should have included Alchemist down here. Yeah, look, it's kind of living the same life as that shadow, that last one that we threw in from the Alter Ego palette. So it kind of makes sense to have it down there. And then I think that undertone-wise, strangely Resilient from the Persona palette, which really is just like a metallic dark brown, right? It's like, I can see why you would include it in a video about bronze shadow if you were filming such a video, but I do kind of think of it as a metallic dark browns and not an dark brown and not an actual bronze, but it kind of goes more on this end. So interesting. And then let's go ahead and put these down, even though I think I might have screwed the pooch a little bit by starting to swatch the Rowan shades because they really lean kind of cool. Although no, yeah, we're fine. We're fine, Hannah, don't worry. Oh, I love these shadows so much. It's like, why do I ever use anything else? It's like they're too amazing to even be called bronze. I feel like none of these are bronze. What even is bronze? Gosh, no, but that just looks orangey gold to me, this one down here. And of course it's swatched out to have kind of a duochrome that I didn't really remember it having. Let's look at the Tom Ford. I feel like what we need to do is invoke the Tom Ford. I feel like probably Naked Bronze is the bronze from which all bronzes flow. Okay, so we're done with the Rowan Warm. We've still got this kind of taupe. Not even sure that we'll be able to consider that a bronze, but we still got this kind of taupey color from the Cool Quad. Let's look at Naked Bronze. What does Tom Ford say bronze is? More brown, like more brown than many of these much warmer and more gold shadows that I've been swatching. And that is, I feel, in line with what I think of. Yeah, look at it. I mean, it has a little warm that's buffing out in the form of like a reddish around the edges, but it is definitely not copper at all. Like it's just really a brown, like a deep, cool leaning bronze with red edges. My favorite. I love that one. And the thing that I feel like we're gonna find out that it's quite a lot like is this shadow, one of my most used shadows, 365 from the Jaclyn Hill palette, especially in terms of how it buffs out around the edges. Yeah, look at that. It's almost a dupe. Like you could almost consider it a dupe. The reflect, the really, really tiny micro glitter in this shadow that makes it look kind of wet is silver. And I think that in the Tom Ford, the reflect is gold. So that's making them look a little bit different in the way that they shine. But they're really similar and the effect is really similar. All right, very clearly, I feel it's time to go into Varus from the gold palette. I feel like Varus is gonna kind of take us. It's going to take us on from here, onward and upward. That is like, I feel, a true bronze. I mean, that is it. This is it. I feel like this right here is the heart. On my pointer finger, there is still Jaclyn Hill 365. That again is very similar, except for that bright sort of almost blue silver reflect that you're seeing up close. Apart from that, it's very similar to Tom Ford Naked Bronze. And you can see it's like rich, ruddy, exciting, like something sort of wild. Whereas I feel like Varis from the gold palette it's like a mild, pure, balanced bronze. Am I going to be able to fit them all? I want them all to fit onto my arm. I want them all to be together. There's definitely not room, but I feel like if I extend onto my hand, I can fit the last, I guess it's just the last 5, because we're done here. We're done here. We're done here, right? I mean, brass, actually, no, I think brass probably needs to be in at the end. It needs to kind of connect to the greens, even though it's more of a greeny golden. I wouldn't consider it a bronze. I feel like we should probably include it. And it's funny, this shadow right here, Arum, I feel like it could have been included on the other end, like way down here. Yeah, it's one of them. I just didn't realize because it is adjacent to these more true bronzes in its own palette. But yeah, it definitely fits with all of these. But they're golds. None of the bronzes, I think, start like here, actually. This was just me working it out of my system. And I feel like we get into bronzes like here, the Hannah bronzes. But what do we think is going to be next? We've got this kind of cool toned taupey one, which, yeah, I think it's next, because then we get into greens. Well, yeah, let's do it. Let's put it down. It might be like a really out of place. Like it might really not fit. Yeah, this is like the coolest bronze that I ever did see. But when you buff it out, it fits. It belongs. It can sit with us. I think the undertone of it, the cream, is more actual bronze, and it's just that there are so many big chunky micas and they are so silver that it makes it look like it's going to be more cool toned. It's bronze. And again, that was Yep from the Rowan Cool Quad. This is maybe my favorite, although the pinky doesn't need to be here. This is like the best thing. Love it. Okay, it's time to move into Greenland. And I think that I'm just going to put all 4 of these on my fingers, and then we'll sort of be able to tell what order they should go in. So this is Colored Rain Golden Olive. This is the Adept shade, which is ACS 26. It looks even more green. This is a Natasha Denona single. I'm not actually sure which one it is, what it's called. And this one is a Natasha Denona single called Sienna. That's a duochrome. I think Sienna should probably be next. I think that even though it's got some other stuff mixed in, its undertone, like its brownest bronze, is the closest in shade to what is already on my arm. And then I think from there we can move into Golden Olive. Yeah, it actually looks more true bronze when it's swatched than when it was on my finger, when it was in the pan. A little bit less green than I expected it to be. And then the Adept shade is like gonna have a little more green in it. Sorry, I swatched them really close together. And then the Natasha Denona, we're like getting into kind of greeny gold territory right there. And then lastly, let's put Brass down so you can see. But yeah, we've totally left the bronze building here for Brass. It's like a bright, greeny, goldy, shiny, metallic, limey, we've like gone through bronze town and then exited. Oh gosh, maybe swatching onto my palm was a bad idea. But here's what we're gonna do. We're going to go through and figure out like what's really bronze, right? So I feel like now that they're all here, and I'll give you some close-ups even though it got a little messy. I feel like now that they're all laid out, I can see that to me, bronze starts here. And I feel like this is actually a copper or a peachy copper. And then everything down here, I feel like it's just like warm, metallic peaches and reds and oranges and golds. I know that some people consider some of these shades to be bronze, but I think of them as bronze adjacent. And for my purposes in the way that I think of color and the way that I mobilize color in my eyeshadow collection, I think these are all actually technically out. They're off the list. The bronzes are here. And this, if I remember correctly, is actually that metallic brown from the Persona Identity 2 palette, which when I was swatching it, I was like, this is really just a dark brown. It's not a bronze. And now that everything's laid out here, I do think it is a bronze. So let's go back and find the ones that I'm actually feeling like are bronze now. We have Resilient from the Persona Identity 2 palette. We have the bronzes from the Rowan quads, which I think actually all three of them turned out to be like squarely in the realm. These two from the Warm palette, and then this one right here, which is from the Cool palette. We've got Tom Ford Naked Bronze, definitely. We've got the Jaclyn Hill color, definitely, 365. And then we've got the Natasha Denona shades, this one right here. Alchemist down here at the bottom actually turned out to be more of a gold and not really something that I consider bronze, although I think it looks very bronze in the pan. When I look at this, I'm like, oh, those are two bronzes that are in here. But now seeing everything compared and seeing it compared to other truer bronzes and to like the Tom Ford bronze, I think that's actually just a gold. This is the bronze. And then I don't think that Natasha Denona Sienna should count. I feel like it's too much of a duochrome. It's standing out as more of a special shade and less of an actual bronze. But I actually do feel like Golden Olive is a bronze. And I feel like this is a greeny bronze. Weirdly, I feel like the Adept one is more of a green. Like, I feel like that's a little bit of a hard sell for a bronze, but I kind of feel like these two, they're like the greenest of actual bronzes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go wash my arm off, and I'm going to do another round of swatches just of the true bronzes in order. It turned out that this first round was more investigative, bronze and bronze adjacent. Now we're gonna swatch all of my bronze eyeshadows. Hey y'all. So I went and washed off my arm, and now I'm just giving it a second to like dry off and calm down. I don't want my arm to still be damp when I swatch the shadows again. But while I was gone, I also looked up bronze on the internet. And what I discovered is that every single color that was just on my arm can be considered bronze by the definition of like the actual alloy of the metal bronze. So I looked at a bunch of different pictures of bronze sculptures, and I looked at some like close-ups of just pure bronze alloy. And I also read about it. And, you know, bronze is an alloy of a bunch of different metals. It's said consisting primarily of copper. So those more coppery tones that were included down on this part of my arm, in many cases, bronze actually looks like that, especially if it has a lot of copper in it. But there's no one definition of bronze, right? It can have like more aluminum in it or more of something else in it and still be considered bronze. So it actually can be a whole bunch of different colors and still be bronze, because a whole bunch of different combinations of metals are all considered to be bronze. The other thing is that bronze weathers, it polishes up differently. Bronze sculptures develop patina over time, so they can get that like crusty, really, really bright aqua opaque green finish on them, and then look really dark brown underneath that or on the edges of that. And it can be really, really polished up and shine pretty much just like gold, or like be indistinguishable from gold. So that kind of goes a long way towards explaining why, when I sat down to confidently swatch all of my bronze eyeshadows, I ended up kind of up to my neck in a bunch of shadows that I'm not sure I consider bronze, but I know that other people consider bronze, because it's a word that encompasses just a huge percentage of the colors that I have in my eyeshadow collection. In a sense, I am starting to think that the Natasha Denona Gold palette would more properly be called the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, because even like these greeny blues are maybe more bronze adjacent than they are actually gold adjacent. So I am going to go back through and just re-swatch the shadows that I felt like stood out to me as being true bronzes, or being the ones that I think of as like my bronzes, or the colors that I use when I want to use bronze. But that is really what I've pulled out here. It's the makeup that I think of as bronze makeup in the realm of makeup on my face, and the contemporary definition of bronze in the realm of makeup, as opposed to copper and gold. But it is a pretty narrow definition. It's like my personal definition inside of makeup, and defining it inside of makeup has already narrowed the definition significantly. Let's start on the other end this time, just for fun. This is that Natasha Denona single. This is Colored Rain Golden Olive. This is a shadow that I reach for all the time. There's just something about it to me. This is Yep from the Rowan 52 Degrees Cool quad. And there on my pinky is Varus from the Gold palette. There's 365 from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. And there's Tom Ford Naked Bronze. There are those two again. Naked Bronze is on the left. This is Nikki Dust from the Rowan Warm Quad, and this one down here is J'adore. Nikki Dust is clearly warmer and has that like red that it buffs out to, and J'adore is like a richer brown. And then lastly, we have Resilient from the Persona Cosmetics Identity 2 palette. I am 100% obsessed with this. This looks so wonderful to me. And I can confidently say that this is what bronze is to me right now. With my use of makeup, this definitely is me swatching all of my bronze eyeshadows, as opposed to what I did before with all of the like yellow, golds, and oranges, and going to the very limey greens. So this is what bronze is to me. But I would really love to know in the comments, what is it to you? Is this what you think of when you think of a row of bronze eyeshadows in different shades? Or do you think of it more as a copper or more as a gold? Do you think of it as something brighter? I think probably we're all right. And I'm really curious to know what your first instinct is, your first thought about bronze, the first thing that you envision in your mind's eye. There they are in all of their glory. Bronze is my favorite color. All right, y'all, that is it. I will link all of these down below in this order. I don't think that I can link absolutely everything that I swatched, although hopefully from watching the video, you were able to tell what everything was. And I will track down this Natasha Denona shade. I'll find out what it is. I'll link everything down below like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My 9 beautiful bronzes. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself right now so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.